All right, well, welcome everybody. This is the Legislative Committee meeting for the SBCC. It is 11:02 on March 25th, 2025. We'll start with roll call, please.
Committee Chair Tom Handy,
Here.
Council Chair Todd Byerther, Council Vice Chair Jay Arnold,
Here.
MVPE Committee Chair Damon Doyle. Not seeing them in the room. BFRW Committee Chair Roger Herringa.
Here.
Thank you. Council Member Chell Anderson declined the meeting. Council Member Matthew Hepner. Not seeing in the room. And then Council Ex Officio Member Representative Alex Rammel. And I'm not seeing them in the room either. And with that, we have a quorum today.
Okay, very good. Is there anybody from the public that would like to introduce themselves? If so, raise your hand, you'd be acknowledged. Or since it's such a small group, you can just unmute and do it if you wish. All right, we'll move on then. Next item is to review and approve the agenda.
And that is shown on the screen here.
Move approval. This is Jeff.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion?
I have one more bill I'd like to discuss before we adjourn, which is Senate Bill 5156, which is the elevator bill. We had some communication that they are maybe looking for a suggestion to bring some of that work back to the SBCC, but as it stands, that bill does not impact SBCC as it's filed right now. So just a discussion on keep an eye out on that one.
Okay. As long as that's okay with those who made the motion.
I'll
Second.
take that as a friendly amendment.
Second's fine.
All right. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All right, motion carries. Next is to review and approve the minutes from the last meeting, March 13th.
Have those here for us.
Those were available on the website too.
I've moved to approve minutes.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Motion, any opposed? Motion carries. All right. Moving on then, legislative update. Start out with 5552.
All right, so 5552 is the Kit Homes bill. This one is has seen a couple iterations out there. At its first iteration, it had a component in it that required when SBCC was doing work for Kit Homes in the building code that we had a limit of cost of $150 per square foot. It wasn't quite clear how that was supposed to be calculated, but in any case, that portion of this bill has been removed. This bill now adds a definition in 1927.015 for kit homes, which means any structures intended for residential use that are comprised of prefabricated walls, floors, and roofs, which are assembled on site and are 800 square feet or smaller in size. And then at the end here, section 3, the State Building Code Council is instructed to perform rulemaking on the codes applicable to kit homes no later than December 31st of this year. And then in the future, we can update those codes. So the reason we're talking about this one today is that this particular bill goes to a hearing tomorrow at 8 a.m. And this is our opportunity to comment on the potential rulemaking for this year. So a little bit more background on that is Todd and I met with Senator Wilson on this bill right as the modification was made to remove the $150 per square foot requirement. During that meeting, we expressed that the December 31st timeline was a little bit contracted for the work to include in this year's, not budget, but the task table. And the senator was adamant of keeping this bill moving on this timeline. So the other reason I'm bringing this forward is Representative Dewar reached out and asked if there was a time that would work better for the SBCC. And I let her know that moving forward with a timetable that aligns with our 2027 code adoption cycle would ease the burden for doing this work. But the issue is we don't want to run afoul of anybody else's intentions after we've already met with the sponsor on this particular bill. And so that's my introduction and why we want to talk about it. So we may want to provide some testimony tomorrow, but I'm not sure if we want to recommend a different date for this bill. And I'll turn it over to Roger.
So because this is something that we would be directed by the legislature, I understand that it would not be critical for us to meet the December 31st, 2025 deadline. Would it be possible for us to change item 1 in there to have it adopt the requirements for the 2024 Washington State Building Code, which is currently happening, November of 26?
So
It would allow us to push the work into next year and would still meet the desire of Senator Wilson, but it takes the December 31st date off and allows us to push it out a little farther.
I think that would be a excellent modification to this, to instead of December 31st to just say adopt building codes applicable to kit homes for inclusion in the 2024 building codes. And that can happen a little outside of the normal cycle. I think that would be an excellent way to reduce that pressure that is felt by the inclusion of this work.
And that would modify section 3 by default then.
Yes, sir.
And then I just, as I think about it, I also wonder if I would love to see that there is a limit to kit homes that is a single story. I think everybody has kind of assumed that, but once you start putting in the building code, who knows? And I think a single story that's 800 square feet can be dealt with. That's in the bill. And then the challenges from a structural perspective is foundations, you can make an assumption on, but seismic is the big one that, how do you handle that? And I don't know how we would do that, but I suppose that's part of our work in the state building code to deal with those two things. So
Roger, do you see the definition in the section 2 needing to include that single story potentially, or could that just be included in the work that we do as part of our rulemaking? Oh, you're muted, Roger. Roger, you're muted.
yeah, sorry. I would love to see it in section 2, item 6. I think I'm assuming everybody on this call has assumed that that's single story. But I don't know.
Roger, if I may, sort of jump in here.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with anything you said, but I think we could probably keep that for the rulemaking process, and then
Okay.
maybe not try to over specify in the bill.
Okay.
I think we could cover that in the process.
Okay.
Okay.
And I like this idea that Roger has. It sounds like we would treat this kind of as off-cycle rulemaking that would go into 2026 versus adding to our workload this year, especially given that depending on when this would pass and go into effect. It's in the middle of our existing process. If we were to take this on as off-cycle rulemaking, do we have any idea of the scope of the work that's being asked? For example, there's a difference between whether there's an ICC code that we look at and decide whether we want to adopt or customize versus saying we want to have to adopt code language ourselves for this. Has there been any scoping of how much work this is?
I think Todd, you might have a little more insight on that one.
Yeah, Jay, I've done the best I can to reach out at multiple levels to the suppliers, to the modular prefab manufacturers, and then also to trade association in that space, and then in ICC. And, I think the answer is all of the above. There's a couple of simple things. There are standards that we can and quickly adopt, like other states are, that are new ANSI standards that help on the prefabrication front of what a kit home is, or a panel or module. But it seems there will be additional code development, but there are some other examples, including a standard process going on right now, ANSI standard process for tiny homes. It seems to parallel kind of what is being asked here. So I think we could, take that structure and start to build on it, and then also look to other states like Colorado and others that have implemented certain model policies related to these types of structures. So there's no silver bullet, but I think there is a lot of willingness and probably external support to help us succeed in this.
Second question is that for this change, are we looking at providing language or just spotlighting the problem during testimony and saying we'd like to change the date? Or are we looking to suggest specific language during testimony?
I think we could suggest the specific language during testimony, but also follow up with that written to the sponsor as a just way to get that or keep that ball rolling. They may or may not be receptive to it, but I think that offering to keep it in the 2024, I think that that's a good compromise that lets us, depressurize our work situation a little bit. And hopefully he seemed receptive to our concerns, just was adamant on making sure that we're addressing some housing issues with our current rulemaking. So I would hope that he's receptive as well to this potential modification.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Todd, did you have more?
Yeah, I was going to say, I think this makes a lot of sense because I think we need to inform everyone that if we miss that December 1st date anyway, it technically is one off cycle rulemaking, even if it's December 31st, right?
Yes.
So I think that's helpful to explain that part first. And then the last comment I'll make related to the code development process, I think a lot of this is actually asking for the manufacturers and the designers of these systems to take on more of that almost third-party type certification, and that's actually welcomed within the industry. And so it doesn't all have to be very specific prescriptive code. We could just define a pathway for a third party to define their code pathway or code listing, if that helps, like an ICCS or other type certification. So
Would
I think
that,
there's a path. Yeah.
would that make it similar to like mobile homes then, where they're certified at a different place or in a different manner?
Yes, but no, in the sense that it's mobile homes are preemptive national code. So one could look at this request that's not well defined, whether this is a state level code that preempts local jurisdictions or really find a pathway with ANSI standards and others that allow a manufacturer to certify their kit of parts essentially. And I think that is where the industry is trying to go in a lot of fronts. So.
Well, I think, too, that it would be a good idea to maybe let them, offer that up. for keeping it in the 2024 codes, and then, just explaining to them, and they may not know that there is no, international or model code to just pull from. So it's a more difficult process that takes a little bit more time. That would be very difficult to complete by the end of this year, but certainly within this current code cycle. I mean, if there was a code already sitting there, then that'd make it much simpler probably. But when we got to kind of put all the pieces together, then that's more difficult.
Well, and if we can advertise some of this work out to, WABO and other interested parties, they may come with proposals for us to jump off with as well. So, but it's still a little bit longer process. So I think that's a relevant point as well.
I would have, in my brain, I was assuming that this would be something that would be added to the residential code.
That's what I believe is intended, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll just speak up. Again, I think we're getting in the weeds, but importantly, we do. I think it's leading to more of a standards process than it is a code process. But I think that'll all be sorted, what belongs in the code and what belongs in reference standards and so forth, and guidelines, and so I think we can get there. Not saying it's easy, but I think we can get there.
So based on the discussion, it seems like I got about 3 main points we would want to deliver in testimony tomorrow, which is that it's, as it stands right now, it's off-cycle rulemaking. And so that's point 1, it's off-cycle rulemaking, and with the December 31st date, it's just a hardship this year. There's also no model code to start with, is being point number 2. So the work required is a little larger than if we were just taking an existing section and bringing it for adoption in Washington. And then the third point would be the suggestion to change the date in section 3 to from December 31st, 2025 to something that is to include these requirements in the 2024 codes. Probably by November, for implementation with the 2024 codes on November 1, 2026. And there might be some code revisor hiccups there if we get the CR 103s out there sitting for implementation. I don't believe that we can have a bunch of other work ongoing with CR documents that overlap that. So it might have to be filed right after November 1, 2026. And Krista, I think I saw you online. Do you have any comments on, because this is one of the things that we've gotten afoul of with multiple things happening at the code revisor at once. Krista, do you happen to have a comment on if we had something like this ready to go on November 1, what it might look like with the code revisor?
I'm kind of assuming that we would do this via an appendix chapter. And so that really wouldn't impact any other filing that we would have for the residential code. So it should be okay, I think.
So we could have it ready to go and even file CR 103 well before November 1 if we're ready?
I would think so.
Okay.
So would the plan then after that be to incorporate it, in the following code cycle into the residential code, or just leave it as an appendix?
I guess with this one, it's not necessarily clear where the intended landing point for the rules that we're working with is. Definitely in the IRC book we would probably prefer as an appendix, but there is, I guess, a potential it could be directed to come into the main body of the code as well with later legislation. But I think it living as an appendix would be the best place for it at the moment. Todd?
And it might be that if we haven't opened the IRC window yet, it might be that external parties will rally around this with knowing this could happen and actually put a petition in the normal code cycle. So,
Okay, on this one, do we have any volunteers to testify? I'm willing to do it. I would I guess be looking to draft up a script to send out to folks for some review before I took that out there. But mainly sticking to the 3 points we have on this particular one.
I'd prefer if you could do it. I can't, I'm not available,
Okay.
but unless anybody else wants to volunteer to take the load.
Todd has his hand up.
Oh, he does, doesn't he? Look at that. Oh, that was quick. I've never seen him move that fast.
Okay, well, then I will volunteer for this one. I'll also volunteer for the next one as well. This coming up, the agritourism one. If we need to make some testimony there. Because they both happen at the same time, and to go in and sit through those meetings to wait for the testimony to come up can detract from everybody's day. So I'll volunteer for those. And then today, at some point, I'll get you guys a script to review, and if you have any additions, deletions, suggestions, shoot them back my way and I'll incorporate those. So that kind of wraps us on SB 5552, unless there's anything else. All right, so with that one, we'll move over to 5055. So this is one that Chell raised at our council meeting last Friday to discuss a little bit about. I was kind of hoping he would be available to express his concerns a little bit more. So this one is essentially if you have a large agricultural building and you want to bring the public into it for agritourism activities, it would render them not subject to building code standards that would apply to other commercial occupancies that might be applicable when considering these uses on the face of their use. So this one we had labeled as a pretty low priority throughout those sessions so far. We haven't given any testimony on this one. And I guess I would open it up for some conversation to see if we think we need to make testimony on this tomorrow.
My question is, does it even apply to ADA?
I would say that if somebody was when I was the building official, if someone brought something like this to the department, I would have automatically kind of started applying a commercial application to it, and then the ADA would apply to it. But there are already, I believe, some exemptions out there for agritourism, or it might have been something local at my jurisdiction. I'm struggling to remember off the top of my head, but this, I would say it would render the ADA not applicable to these structures, and so it would reduce cost on transitioning this type of building towards the agritourism use. But when I read this one, my building official hat was giving me some notice that I didn't really like the exemption from all the building codes for such a large property, depending on the condition of a large barn or something like that, there could be lots of safety issues inside there. Roger?
Yeah, I think from what I remember, Shell's comment last Friday was around exiting and that kind of thing. And so I think I'm not sure if the council itself has a need to respond. My personal opinion is I don't like it for what you just mentioned. There's exiting, there's fire. I think certainly from a structural perspective, is there a seismic concern of having a large gathering? Is there a limit to the number of people? Because the way it's written now, it could be a barn filled with 1,000 people. And I don't think that in that scenario, it should limit, you should not have to file all the building permit stuff. So if anything, a comment about that, is there applying some sort of a limit in the size or number of people would make sense to me, so. But again, that's kind of my personal opinion. Thinking about what should the council potentially specify, I think it is at least raising that concern. So.
And I mean, it does say accept standards to meet all life and fire safety requirements. So it's unclear to me how this one would apply to every building. You're going to come with unique buildings with unique paths to compliance, and so I think it's a interesting one.
Yeah, that was my thought when Shell brought it up on Friday, is what is included in all life and fire safety requirements, and maybe that it needs to be much more clear about exactly what and what does not have to be adhered to. So.
Right. Jay?
Well, looking at RCW 424-830, one of the agritourism activities listed in the definition is on-site hospitality services. And so I think that opens this up to a lot of different things. And my suggestion would just be in the informed category, Dustin, that you say, like, for a commercial building permit, you've got building code, fire code, plumbing code, fuel gas code, mechanical code, energy code, and ask for specificity on what they want to apply or not. Because I think there is a potential public health issue on what's happening with the plumbing code for hospitality use. And then also beyond life and fire safety requirements, other things that may apply for mechanical that are beyond my area of expertise, that I think we should just let the committee know there's a lot more complexity here than just life and fire safety that would be covered in the fire code.
Yeah, I believe too, it's so wide open, it's just, while it might not be within our purview to say much, but this could so easily be abused. Hospitality, for crying out loud, I'm in that industry and I'm in a rural area, we got all these places that are doing, 150 person wedding receptions and, that kind of thing. And, there's nothing, and some of them are actually building, bridal suites and things like that where they can stay overnight, and that would all be maybe encompassed in that same group of things. So you could actually have, a very, identical to almost any other, commercial building, emulated in this without having it to follow most of the building codes. So it's hard to know where to stand on this. I would just say, if nothing else, it would provide exemptions for anybody in the rural county that might have a building to avoid all the building codes.
Krista?
And you need to also keep in mind that the ADA is a federal law, and we can't exempt them from federal law. The building code provides a safe harbor from that federal law, but they would still be open to any action from the DOJ or lawsuits from the general public.
And when does an agricultural building stop being an agricultural building when it becomes commercial?
Once you start allowing the general public in.
There you go. So, then in essence, it kind of defeats itself.
Yes. So if we're informing, we would inform that the ADA is federal and compliance with the building codes does not necessarily. So if we exempt from building codes, it does not exempt compliance with ADA because it's federal code. And then a suggestion to potentially include aspects of the codes that are desired to be specifically exempted. So I have on there as the example being the public health concern because of plumbing, and if there's other specific codes they might want to exempt from instead of just a blanket statement of commercial buildings or commercial building permits. Building code standards, sorry.
It's hard to say. I mean, there could be a lot of different things added into this to kind of narrow it, like Roger said, number of people. I would also, argue that length of time, might have an impact on how this building is really and truly used, I mean, there's a bunch of them around here, where they converted barns into venues, and use them frequently. And they would, according to this, broadly read, all be exempt from most of the building codes. Including, I mean, if they're gonna do food in there, they're gonna have to have health department stuff and, all kinds of different things involved that seem to be, I don't know, this is a pretty weird bill.
Yeah.
I can understand why somebody might want to do it. Makes starting that kind of a business cheaper. But I don't know.
Katie?
Sorry. Yeah, I was wondering if, I mean, I appreciate what they're trying to do and in a lot of ways support that. Wondering if it could like return to its primary use. Because it's a 6-month, I don't know, just like trying to, I get what they're, I was actually going to look up RCW that they named, which I didn't yet. But I don't know if that could help. If it had to return to the use that it was initially for. Do you know what I'm saying?
Or never changed from that use. It's just that tourism is an incidental use.
Yeah, because here, let me look up that. Because it feels like, yeah, turning it into a bridal suite. It's like if it's a horse paddock and it goes back to that, I don't know. Like
So, I mean, I like that word incidental. Could it possibly be just a suggestion of agricultural buildings used for incidental agritourism
Yeah.
activities? And then that kind of, maybe brings it all back towards, the primary use remains the same. We're not actually creating a venue in here. We're just saying, hey, the public can come in, tour my milk barn or whatever the heck it is. And, while the weather's nice and people want to get out and, pick daisies in my pasture. And then when it's raining out, we're not bringing the public in and the barn is back at its primary intended use.
Still a barn.
Yep.
yeah,
I think,
it says here that the way that it defines agritourism, it's talking about like farming, ranching. It's not limited to this, but it's like on-site educational programs, petting zoos, corn mazes. We've all been there. There's food. Never mind.
hospitality then
Yeah,
that opens it wide open.
yeah, that's the part.
I mean, a hotel is in the hospitality industry. So I like the word incidental as a, I mean, it would kind of qualify its use to being, to not changing the building's primary use. and then it's probably good. My opinion.
Well, so as far as delivering testimony tomorrow, we want to inform that there's issues with the broad exemption that we see. So if we could include specific aspects desired to be exempted and maybe suggest add the term incidental in there, and then also point out that the ADA is a federal standard and not exempted because you comply with the building codes.
I think that would be good, because in any building, if you change the primary use, you change the code requirements. And if an agricultural building's primary use gets modified or changed by this as it is written, then we could have, all kinds of things happen.
Okay. Well, I think with those points, I can craft up a script to shoot out to you guys for final approval. Is there anything else we should touch on this one before we move to the last one?
Dustin, I'm just looking at the RCW chapter 4 as well, and I actually wonder if there are 3 sections that they should refer to. 830 and 832. I mean, all 3 are related to agritourism, and I guess as defined, I don't know. I mean, that gets into, I don't know, rulemaking. I'm a neophyte on how to draft regulations and RCWs, but it's 830, and then there are 2 sections. Yeah. I don't know. It says as defined, and I suppose the RCW then would send you to 832 and 830. What is it? 835. Maybe that's all right. Just as we're thinking about, are you opening yourself up to concerns, liability, that kind of thing? That's kind of covered under the immunity and the fact that you need to do a warning notice. So gives me a little bit more comfort, but I like the idea of just making sure that it isn't incidental. Hopefully that avoids, people building the wedding venue and calling it a agritourism.
Okay. A warning. So they just have to hang this on their gate and say enter at your own risk, pretty much. Okay.
Yeah, I haven't read it in complete detail, but that's what they have to post a warning. There's something in the RCW about immunity or well.
And it seems a lot of that would be covered with their insurance carrier anyway, if
Yeah.
they have it, but.
Okay. Well, I'll craft up a script. We can modify it, and then I'll be ready to deliver tomorrow at the hearing. That brings us to Senate Bill 5156. This is in its current form. I did send out some language modifications attempting to break this particular work into 2 different sections. Before I jump into what all is happening here, this bill went to hearing last week, and I can provide some links to some of that stuff so that people can digest what was said. But it looks like the elevator industry might be opposed to this bill. And there's some testimony I haven't had a chance to fully digest there, but I can send out a link on that one. But I wanted to point out that in the commercial building code, we have chapter 30, which is for elevators and conveying systems. We have two amendments to this section. One is for elevator cars and ambulance stretchers. I think that we could potentially bring the small elevator car as an exception to this section, or potentially bring it into an appendix with the single stair stuff that we're working on. We have another amendment down the way right here for temperature control. This is for the machinery equipment rooms. And outside of these two amendments, the rest of this chapter remains intact as a model code section. The chapter does point to design and construction per standards over here. Some of these standards are the exact same ones that L&I adopts for their elevator program. But the one thing that I find probably concerning for end code users is nowhere in our amendments to this section do we actually point back to L&I for that inspection and permitting and stuff. So the language I provided back out to some folks at the legislature attempted to break the workout to keep the standards adoption within the L&I wheelhouse. L&I has had the responsibility for elevators since before the creation of the SBCC, and I don't think that we should be bringing standards adoption specifically back to SBCC. I think what we should do is correlate what is adopted within L&I within the building code, and also place a hard pointer here to L&I for code users. So that's something that we don't have a code proposal for 2024 codes, but is something I see as a bit of an issue when people are trying to do elevator work. In one of our past meetings, Angela Haupt, who's a representative of WABO, said that if we didn't have the requirements in the building code, that you would never see these at L&I, because people don't go to L&I first. They come to the building departments first, and they get the design approved, and then they seek the permitting on the elevators. So I think, you know, a pointer to L&I is prudent in this elevator section. And I think that L&I elevator program would be more than happy to participate in crafting something like that. But I'll pause there for Roger.
Yeah, looking at it, the first thing that jumped out at me is the 24 units, and I'm trying to read through exactly what it's. So this is an example of a bill legislation that starts putting limits on numbers. The single exit we are talking about, I know 6 stories and 6 units per floor, so that would make that 32 units. I just you know, then I go to, yeah, I guess I'm a little concerned about, is this another one of those cases where the legislature is requiring numbers and those numbers don't align with the building code? So,
You know, where it might tie our hands in the future.
yes, like, would this be the one thing that would require, I don't know, would this up, you know, I'm thinking the single exit is an elevator and a single stair, but you're gonna have 32 units, so how does this fit that? And I'm not sure, so.
I guess first thing to keep in mind as we're talking about this one today is that this is what we have on the screen here is the current version on file. We don't have a separation actually happening. It is probably likely to come down And we need to, I guess, keep an eye out for that new version to drop. And since this is already beyond the hearings at the House, it's likely it won't come back for another hearing as well. So when this happened at the House, this was sitting squarely with L&I, and this was off of our radar. We weren't concerned about it at that point. Now that they're asking for additional input, we're anticipating the drop of a revision, and I guess just need to be in a position to draft a letter to inform on the impacts of what they're doing. So the language I sent out to you guys that I suggested back on this one, no guarantee that that will come out at all or in the exact drafting that I gave to them. So I think that if it comes back and splits it out, that point of there being 32 units versus the 24 is a relevant update to this one. In the very beginning of this, speaking, I had a meeting with Senator Salomon, and they indicated that this is intended to go along with the single stair provisions, or to help accommodate the walk-up scenarios in those single stair exit buildings, where we might be able to place somebody on a higher level that doesn't want to necessarily walk up 6 flights of stairs to get to their spot. I'll pause for Todd.
Oh, Dustin, I just wanted, you said 32, 36.
Oh, sorry, 36.
Yeah.
And I'll ask that question first. Where is the 36? We're seeing 24 here as the limit revisions. It says 36 now.
Roger's referring to the single exit bill in a count based on what's allowed per story and the number of stories there. Is that accurate, Roger?
I thought it was 4 times 6 stories in that bill also.
No, I
I
think
think this,
Todd, the single exit there, we are looking at 6 units per floor. I don't know if that's in the RCW for sure, but
okay, I might be wrong. I thought it was 4 times 6 stories, but you could be right. Six stories. Maybe we're both wrong. I thought there was a limitation for 4 on this.
I thought there was somewhere as well, and it might be something that I'm just misremembering from a previous misremembering.
Maybe they got edited out. Okay, well, regardless, my second point is, I think it's valuable if we inform that everyone's on the same page that this process is already happening, but of course this is going to be optional for local adoption. And so what this bill will do is make that elevator piece perhaps mandatory, unless it's clear that it's meant to be part of the optional appendix, or it's really meant to be mandatory across the board. So, and I'm not taking a position on that. I'm just saying I think it's important to inform and remind everybody what's happening, what's not happening. Because this would be in the main code then, correct?
Yeah,
Which, I mean, has application outside of single exit. I mean, you could do a walk up. Then you could this could apply to a 5-story 24 unit building, in my opinion. That's not a single exit.
Todd, do you have more? Or- Katie, did you want to?
Yeah, maybe I misunderstood. So is this only for buildings for the single exit, or it's for everything?
Well, the way it's written is it will apply to everything, but when I spoke with Senator Solomon, he indicated that it was kind of targeted for the single exit buildings.
Yeah, I was gonna just suggest that they say that in the language and then get rid of the 24 units so that it just correlates to the.
And we could potentially ask him to target this section 19.27.115, which is our single exit work, instead of just creating a new section in there. And then we can, that would have the effect of targeting it to the single exit work.
That's what I meant.
Gotcha. I guess we would just be on the lookout for a new version of this to come out, and we could even preemptively write a letter that, you know, if they want to split that we should target that specific section. Tom?
Yeah, I agree with that. I just had a general question. Is it typical to have an elevator so small that you can only get one wheelchair without an attendant in it?
Not in my experience, but I'm understanding that in Europe and maybe some other places within the United States, there are some smaller elevators being put in, but I'm not privy to see them on occasion.
I've seen one, and it was in a single family house.
As a wheelchair lift though, or something, but not an
No, it was an
elevator?
elevator.
Oh, it was. Oh, I'll be
Yeah.
done.
Yeah, and the single family residences are exempt from that ambulance stretcher size requirement.
Okay, thanks.
Todd?
Yeah, I was gonna say, we probably should clarify in that conversation what is allowed up to 4 stories right now and what this addresses. And I'd be careful about necessarily just putting a pointer to this section, because remember, this section is going into the optional part of the code. If their intent is really to put it across the board in the code, I think there might be other applications beyond just single exit that we should consider first before making our recommendation.
Gotcha. Well, I guess that really kind of satisfies the need to talk about this one a little bit. Do we want to send out a letter before a new version drops to try to inform so that we can maybe have those changes drop as part of the new bill? And if so, I can get that letter drafted and sent out for approval. Or do we want to wait until the new bill comes out to get on that wagon? Todd?
Well, how many other opportunities would we have? Would it be, I mean, to me, it almost makes sense to get it ahead of the.
That's kind of what I'm thinking, is getting it a little bit ahead. And I'm getting some feedback from saying yes, we should get on it now because the session moves fast enough that we may not be able to get it out in time before final passage if we wait for the substitute. So we'll get on drafting a letter on this one as well. Todd?
I was going to ask on this. I mean, we talk about the single exit as the appendix at this point, because that's how it's proposed in the WABO amendment. But this doesn't say that it has to be only in that section, right? There might be things that PAG recommends to adopt in the main part of the building code. Is that correct?
I think that could happen, yes.
Okay, because I guess I'm not as concerned about this, because I think this is directing the council to go through the process to consider where and what should be there.
Okay.
But if the 24 unit thing conflicts with something else that we're doing where this may be applicable, it might still be an issue.
I think the 24 units is actually a pretty important part of it, because what they're saying is you're serving a much smaller load. Okay. And therefore, and that's the trigger that allows you to make that optional. And so I think the point here is that when it's optional to have an elevator, you want to enable, you know, something more appropriate and cost effective if you do want to add that as an option, right? Hmm. And then to your question earlier, yes, this is more of a global standard. It is especially common across Europe.
So,
well, where does that leave us then with it? Well, I mean, I see that point too, you know, that makes sense to me too. So
as far as this one, we're going to get on drafting a letter for this one. If we could maybe just restate some of the bullet points. I wasn't taking super great notes during that conversation. But we want to clarify, is it just for single stair buildings, or is this intended to apply to all commercial buildings?
So you're gonna ask them questions, is that the intent then here?
Well, I mean, that's one of our bullet points we've been talking about, and then the time frame, you know, so one of the things that could potentially, I guess, happen is, you know, so L&I, to do this work, their fiscal note gave about $3 million to do the work and implement within their elevator program. And there's concern that if this comes back as a whole thing to SBCC, that one, we're setting a precedent by bringing elevator standards over to SBCC, which we just do not want that to happen. But in order to do all this work in the time frame that's identified in this version of the bill, requires some off-cycle rulemaking, and you know, we could potentially do it, but in the draft language I suggested to align it with our 2027 adoption cycle. Just to give us a lot of time to plan for how this happens and to coordinate with L&I on it. So I'm not sure what all I'm trying to include in a letter to the sponsor on this one.
I think I would, in the letter or bullet point, I would ask them, is the 6 stories and the number of units critical, or did they just assume 4 units per floor? It's unclear to me. I mean, and I just know that 6 units per floor. So if that means that this criteria doesn't work, if you have 6 units per floor, I don't know, but I think clarification on that point. What are they trying to achieve?
Gotcha. Okay.
There's one almost grammatical error that might make a difference here in how this works too. And then right next to the number 8 on the lines, should the word to be that or which? Because that allows the passenger and freight elevators that meet the most current version of the global safety and related, and on and on.
Gotcha.
Because otherwise, 2 is kind of, it seems like the wrong word there to me. That might just be a friendly amendment change.
Well, I was going to raise also, it says the department. Do we know what department they're referring to?
That's L&I based on
Okay.
this draft. For
That
sure.
that may want to be clarified too. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well-
that's covered in the reference to chapter 7087 and the
Okay.
department as defined in that chapter.
okay, thank you.
So with that, I think I have some bullet points for a letter. I'm gonna get some testimony drafted up and the letter drafted up, and I'll send it out to everybody. And we'll send the revisions around a little bit, and then be ready to submit this out. So it is 12, and do we want to extend the meeting at all?
I don't have any more. Does anybody else?
I don't have any more, and I kind of need to run.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Well, with that, that's all I have for this. I would just say, expect me to send some stuff out to you here this afternoon with some draft work.
I'll keep my email peeled.
Okay, awesome. Well, I appreciate everybody's time here today.
Well, thank you. Yeah.